Well, hello, friends, and welcome to episode 7 of the Colts on Kirkwood podcast presented by the Hoosier Network. I am your host for today, Jack Rizzo, joined alongside my fantastic co-host. That's Owen Graham, and that's Peter Miller. Gentlemen, it is great to be with you today. The Indianapolis Colts are now 5-1, their best start to a season since 2009. They defeated the Arizona Cardinals 31-27 at Lucas Oil Stadium this past Sunday. An absolutely crazy back and forth game between these two teams. And ultimately, the Colts bended, but they didn't break, as they were ultimately able to edge out this competitive Arizona Cardinals team. All right, we are going to start off with just overall reactions to this game. What went well for the Colts? What didn't? Owen, I'll start with you.
I was there again. I got to see the Colts win in person. Yeah, it was definitely a little out of the ordinary of what we've seen from the Colts so far this season. We've seen a lot of dominant victories. We saw a very, very close victory against Denver, and we saw, kind of a loss where they beat themselves. This one was weird because it was kind of back and forth the entire game, and it didn't really, I guess, seem that way for the Denver game. It was kind of like a second-half game. Rams, obviously, they lost that one. They had their hands full with the Cardinals, and specifically the offense, which we'll get into it. Kyler Murray didn't even play, and Jacoby Brissett kind of tore up the Colts defense and really had to kind of force the Colts into, coaching a pretty good game and executing a pretty good game on the rest of the way out. Ultimately, though, I was, as someone like unbiased, I was satisfied with the Colts' performance. I wasn't, over the top overjoyed with, how they performed. I think there's definitely continuous question marks on the defensive side that, still just needs to be figured out. I think that's kind of just the only thing I can really say about it. But overall, this was a game that you guys, I should say, thought it was going to be closer. I had it as a blowout. Colts obviously maybe made some plays that made it closer than what it could have been, but ultimately, good coaching on the offensive side of the ball for a majority of the game. Good coaching overall towards the stretch, and ultimately, I don't think you can necessarily be upset with the win. However, there are some things that you need to nitpick and get down to business, because we're getting into that stage of the season where some of these things that are becoming consistent throughout each and every game, and that any kind of football fan can see, if they keep continuing, that's just going to add up and going to get exploited at some point.
These are the kind of games that you just kind of have to know how to win in the NFL, especially if you want to be considered a legitimate contender. As you said, Owen, we've seen this Colts team win some blowouts. We've seen them kind of give games away. They've won a close one against the Broncos. This felt more like a Colts of the past,
Absolutely.
Where you're playing a team that you on paper better than and probably should be beating, but defensive, miscues, what have you. I get there were injuries in the secondary, but Jacoby Brissett should not be passing for 320 yards. That to me is a massive issue. But I think at some point in the second half, it became pretty clear that this game was going to be a shootout for the Colts. And for me, I was thinking this is either going to come down to whoever has the ball last, unless the Colts defense can finally get a stop. And Jack, as you mentioned, they bended, but they did not break. That makes me think back to those Matt Eberflus days, those final drives of games.
They would break.
Yeah.
They would break.
So, yeah, obviously some things to clean up defensively. A game that, all things considered, you're happy with the win, of course. But this is a game that really shouldn't have been as close as it was. But ultimately, Daniel Jones and the offense did what was necessary. They got those 2 touchdown drives. I think what was strange for me, too, was seeing this Colts team play from behind.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't seen a lot of that this season.
Yeah.
So, I think it's an impressive win. And, 6 weeks into the season, tied for the best record in the NFL. The Buccaneers right now until, to be determined on the Bills tonight. But I think obviously an excellent, excellent start to the Colts season. And, ultimately just a lot of strong performances on offense and just did what you had to do on defense. So collectively, I think you can be satisfied.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you both mentioned a great point about the fact that, good NFL teams find ways to win games that they're not supposed to, right? This is a game that Colts teams in previous years probably don't win, but it's clear that this team has way more grit, they have way more perseverance than they have in previous years. And I think it just speaks to the leadership, on this team. I think the Colts finally have, true leaders in this locker room. I think Shane Steichen is finally starting to build the culture in that locker room and establish that identity, an identity that this Colts team has been missing for well over a decade, I would say, at this point. But ultimately, the Colts, they fought from behind most of this game. They ultimately were able to pull it out. Let's get into the offensive performance, which was, as we all know, the much better side of the ball for the Colts in this one, as it has most of the season. Daniel Jones, 22 of 30 yesterday for 212 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, also added a rushing touchdown. The stat line looks good on paper, but overall, one of Daniel Jones' more inconsistent outings as a Colt so far. Not to say he was bad or anything, but he definitely had a couple of rough moments there, especially in the first half. He threw a pretty rough interception to Cardinals linebacker Mack Wilson early in the second quarter, severely underthrew Mo Alley Cox on a bootleg, and Mack Wilson was right there for the interception. Also had a couple of misfires really throughout the first 3 quarters, but fourth quarter, Daniel Jones, that was MVP-type stuff right there, leading the Colts to 2 touchdown drives in that fourth quarter, having some absolutely magnificent throws, 2 of them going to Alec Pierce on those couple of drives. Had a nice throw to Josh Downs in the back pylon of the end zone to tie the game up at 24, and then ultimately the next drive led the Colts to a touchdown, giving them the lead and the win. Obviously those first 3 quarters didn't really look that great for Daniel Jones. And I think if this was Giants Daniel Jones, he probably would have crumbled in these tight pressure situations. But with the weapons around him, with Daniel Jones building his confidence every week in this offense, he ultimately was able to persevere, something we haven't really seen him do throughout his NFL career other than that 1 year with the Giants in 2022. But now he has 8 touchdowns and 3 interceptions on the season. He's doing exactly what the Colts want him to do and be that game manager, because obviously, as we'll talk about in a second, this is a Colts team that is still heavily reliant on the run game. But ultimately, a lot of perseverance shown from Daniel Jones in this game after a tough start. Guys, overall thoughts on Daniel Jones and his performance in this game, ultimately leading the Colts to victory. Owen, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point. I think Daniel Jones is maybe a step off this game. He kind of struggled to find any real momentum or footing there in the first half. But, I mean, we're still talking about a guy that only had 8 incompletions, and one of those was a very bad interception. Another one probably could have been an interception later in the second half. But ultimately, I think, like you said, Jack, he's doing what the Colts are asking him to do, and mainly that's take care of the ball for the most part. You can get a little risky on some throws, and we've yet to see any real, deep threat kind of passes for that matter. But take care of the ball for the most part. Try to capitalize on those explosive plays. That one interception was just not a good throw. I mean, it wasn't like he was tossing it down deep and it was like a 50-50 ball. He just didn't make a good throw. But, I mean, 8 touchdowns and 3 interceptions on the year. That's a pretty good ratio. And only 8 incompletions on the game. He's not going to be this guy that's going to, give you 300 yards every game, throw for 4 touchdowns, kind of like, what teams like the Buffalo Bills are asking of Josh Allen, what the Chiefs ask of Mahomes, what the Chargers ask of Herbert, et cetera, et cetera. Daniel Jones is the perfect quarterback to just do his job. And I think that's what is making this Colts offense look so good, is because he's not really, coming out with this big boast of pride that him needing to be the guy. I think he's just being the Colts quarterback, and that's it. And he's doing a really good job of it so far this season. Now, the part that I get a little just I still go back and forth on this because the Colts wide receiver room looked decent on Sunday, but I don't know. You guys can like tell me I'm wrong, but I just feel like they're still missing someone. I feel like there's someone that can fit in this wide receiver room that can just bring out a little bit more production. Michael Pittman, 2 receptions for 20 yards. Josh Downs had a really good game. 6 receptions, 42 yards, and his first touchdown of the year. AP Alec Pierce, two receptions for 48 yards. I don't remember really when one of those catches was kind of on a deep end. It was a really good throw, but an even better catch by Alec Pierce. I think both of those catches actually were the same kind of route. But I don't know. I just feel like they're missing. They're lacking a little bit of playmaking with their receivers. I feel like Alec Pierce, you can only run a certain amount of routes with. Josh Downs, as we all know, is your security blanket. Michael Pittman, I think that's where I get a little stuck. Is Pittman's a good receiver, and he's had some good games, but like, is he really? When you really look on the year, is he really that number one receiver that you really like need in a team? I don't know. I'm gonna just start out by saying I'm gonna be a little skeptical of the Colts this episode, just because the win was good, but like there are stuff that still needs to be cleaned up. And as we will talk about kind of as the trade deadline keeps coming, and we may have like a Colts themed episode on that and where we could see the Colts upgrading. I think this is a hotter take. I think they could do something at receiver. I don't think that's out of the question. I don't know. I just think they could use a little bit more of some playmaking on the outside. But, there's nothing to say about Jonathan Taylor. He's perfect, pretty much. 21 carries for 123 yards and another touchdown. Tyler Warren, that's your playmaking at a tight end. But something to keep in mind as we head towards the trade deadline. You guys are welcome to disagree with me, but that's just how I feel.
It makes you wonder, I guess, really what the true idea is for A.D. Mitchell, because A.D. Mitchell was inactive yesterday. Not only, a week before, he played, 9 snaps total or something after his big mistakes, and now he's inactive.
Had to be a healthy scratch, right?
Definitely. Yeah. It makes you wonder, hey, maybe are they thinking about trading him and potentially bringing in a receiver of their own? Yeah, I mean, trade conversations are for further down the line, I think, as the deadline gets closer and closer. I think what's interesting about Daniel Jones's performance is his stats were almost identical to the win against the Raiders last week.
Yeah.
Against the Raiders, 20 for 29, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns. Against the Cardinals, 22 for 30, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns. He, as you said, Owen, he's doing his job, and he's doing it really well, which is exactly what we talked about last week, exactly what he was brought in to do. I think what was cool now, and I can almost put my hands up a little bit and apologize to Daniel Jones. I said last week, look, the Colts aren't asking you to be Superman and go down the field in the end of the game and make a bunch of crazy plays to tie the game or win the game and get in the end zone. He engineered 2 really impressive touchdown drives to give the Colts the lead. And I think that's always been in his locker. I was not expecting to see it here with the Colts. So I credit to Daniel Jones for finding the clutch, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it's a testament to I mean, you mentioned Owen, you wouldn't necessarily see that in New York. It's a testament to the team that's been built around him. Chris Ballard's always prioritized the offensive line. They've played great. I thought Tanner Bortolini, who might have struggled a bit this year, had his best game so far of the season. Matt Gonzalez continues to play really well. Quentin Nelson is, there's never a bad thing to say about Quentin Nelson. Tyler Warren's obviously, he was leading receiver yesterday. His playmaking is just phenomenal. You have a good mix of receivers. Michael Pittman not as involved as you would like. Alec Pierce maybe not as involved as you would like. But Josh Downs, again, for the second week, kind of found his role and executed that really well. Jonathan helps when you have an elite run game behind Jonathan Taylor. Yeah. And to maybe piggyback off of you, Owen, I think it might be a bit of a hot take at the trade deadline. Do the Colts think of maybe adding another running back to add some more depth as they prepare a playoff run? Amir Abdullah had very few touches yesterday, but I was impressed with what he saw. He's on the practice squad. You can only elevate him a certain number of times. DJ Giddens hasn't done too much in his limited opportunities, so it makes you wonder. But no, offensively, no question about it. The Colts' offense is the reason they won this game.
Yeah.
Because when your defense is giving up over 300 passing yards to a backup quarterback, and you're still winning a game, and it's not because of the defense, and, great, they got the stop in the end, awesome. You're not winning this game unless you're putting up 31 points, which is the most the Cardinals have allowed this season. So hats off to the Colts defense. Shane Steichen, Jim Bob Cooter for having a great game plan there. Still lead the league in scoring points per game at this point. I don't know the number, but the Colts have to keep that. You got to keep that consistency going because playing good defense is only going to take them so far if the offense isn't able to keep up this, I guess, high-flying scoring, if you will. Jack?
Well, something we have to keep in mind here is that coming into yesterday's game, the Arizona Cardinals had the highest scoring defense in the NFC, right? Their defense had played very, very well the first 4 weeks, and I think that they have some players on that defense who are going to be Pro Bowlers this year. Budda Baker is, I think, one of the most outstanding defensive backs in the league. He doesn't get any recognition playing in the desert. And if Budda Baker was a corner and not a safety, I think the Colts would be spamming the Cardinals' phone at the trade deadline trying to get him on the team, but the Colts don't need a safety. They have two good ones. I will disagree with what you said, Owen. I don't think it's necessary at all to add another weapon for Daniel Jones at the trade deadline when you consider that this is the highest scoring offense in the league, an offense that put up 29 points on the Denver Broncos defense, a defense who outside of that game allows just over 12 points per game to every other offense they've faced. I'm okay with the Colts, spreading the ball around. They had 3 receivers with over 40 receiving yards yesterday. I think that's perfectly fine. That's what Shane Steichen does. He likes to spread the ball around to his weapons. As great as it would be to have a guy like Jackson Smith and Jigba on this team who just goes out there and puts up 150 yards every week. I think the way this Colts offense is, you almost would rather have them spread the ball around, especially considering that despite Daniel Jones' performance, despite all these great receivers, this is still a run-first offense, right? Jonathan Taylor with 21 carries on Sunday, and, obviously shout out to him. It wasn't really a flashy performance from Jonathan Taylor, but these 5, 6, 7-yard gains that he has on every run play, they add up over the course of a 60-minute game, and it shows in the stats with over 123 rushing yards. I'd say he's probably the favorite right now for the Offensive Player of the Year in the NFL, especially with Puka Nacua getting hurt this past Sunday, and we're not really sure what his outlook is for the next couple of weeks, but I think it was a very impressive performance considering you were going up against the highest scoring defense in the NFC, and Jonathan Gannon, I think, who is one of the best defensive play callers in the league. Now, that could have played to Shane Steichen's advantage considering he was with Jonathan Gannon in Philly for a couple of years. And speaking of Shane Steichen, this may have been the best offensive game plan he's ever put out in a single game. You just had receivers were just wide open at several points in this game. That opening drive, that touchdown pass to Tyler Warren, there was no Cardinal defenders on that whole side of the field. And I've seen the Colts run that play before, Drew Ogletree. Now you run it with a tight end 10 times better than Drew Ogletree and Tyler Warren. And it's scary things for the rest of the defenses in the NFL. I think I really was skeptical about Shane Steichen coming into the season, but maybe all Shane Steichen needed was, maybe not the most inaccurate quarterback since Achilles Smith 25 years ago to be able to show what he can do as an offensive play caller. But I just really thought that it was an impressive showing from this offense. And, especially the fact that they did it against a really good defense. And this isn't the first time the Colts offense has had a great game against a really good defense. And that's why I'm confident in this offense to keep up, maybe not score over 30 points a game for the rest of the season, but keep it somewhere close to that. I would say at least 25 for the rest of the season. You guys can disagree with me if you want to. But that's just my overall thoughts on this game and the offensive performance from Shane Steichen and the Colts offense.
I'm going to agree with Jack what you said about the receiver stuff. This is a Colts offense that likes to spread the ball around, and 6 games into the season, we're yet to see a receiver break 100 yards in a game. When you look at the receiving leader for every game so far this season, Michael Pittman, Tyler Warren, Michael Pittman, A.D. Mitchell with an asterisk.
I did say he would lead the Colts in yards that week.
Ashton Doolin and then Tyler Warren again. So this isn't going to be, the offense, an offense like, the Bengals where it's all going to go through Jamar Chase, or the Falcons, everything goes through Drake London, what have you. This is a team that's going to like to spread the ball around and give guys a lot of different guys touches. So I don't know if necessarily adding another receiver is going to, solve any problems. But as long as Daniel Jones is throwing the ball on time and accurately and putting his receivers in a spot to make a play, I think the Colts offense is going to be just fine, especially with how Jonathan Taylor's playing. Because, by the way, when I think maybe 2 weeks ago we could have thrown him in the Offensive Player of the Year conversation, it's almost time to maybe throw him in the MVP conversation, considering how things are going right now.
They just don't give.
Agree.
They just don't
give it to running backs.
Yeah. Baker though.
Daniel Jones still has better odds than Jonathan Taylor right now.
Yeah, I think Baker though. Baker has just been unbelievable with all of his receivers hurt too.
Fair enough, Peter. Though, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think that's kind of the idea that you guys are going with, and that makes sense. I don't know. Just some food for thought. It would be boring if we had no disagreements on the podcast. So, gotta give it. I
get where you're coming from.
I think there just needs to be like a touch more speed, I think is what I'm getting with. Because like I said, you get that speed from Alec Pierce, but like his route tree, like what is it? It's go ball, deep post, deep out.
I think it's expanding though a bit this year.
Where?
I mean, you start to see him on these crossers. I mean, both of his receptions yesterday were on these crossers, which I think, and I think if Alec Pierce wants to expand his route tree, he can. And to be fair, Owen, if you think that Alec Pierce route tree is improving, I would not pay him this offseason. I'll say it right now. If Alec Pierce can't improve his route tree, do not pay him. You don't pay a one-trick pony to a big contract.
I don't know if that's something that he improves, though. That's kind of just up to the Colts and the calls that they give Alec Pierce. That's where I kind of get stuck with. I'm not going to go as far as to say don't pay him, but I don't know. Just maybe some extra speed to go on the offense, but
Anthony Gould.
I like Anthony Gould. He's a great special teamer. He's got some speed. I mean, he was great at Oregon State.
I wouldn't mind it.
I mean, if you use a draft pick on him, why not go use him? I mean, the Colts have done a fairly decent job at developing these mid-round receivers. I mean, that's where Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, and Josh Downs all were not first-round picks.
2, 3.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Pittman and Pierce were 2s. Downs was a 3. You got to trust Reggie Wayne, right? How is Reggie Wayne not in the Hall of Fame yet? Can someone please answer that question for me?
That is 100% a valid point and a topic for another day we could do.
Yeah. Maybe this year.
2 hours on why the Hall of Fame needs to be fixed, but you know.
And also, Tyler Warren, probably the best tight end in the league right now. But we got to go over to the defense now. Well, unlike the offense, I don't really think there's many positives at all to talk about on this defense during this game. The Cardinals were missing Kyler Murray. Now, no disrespect. I don't want to disrespect Jacoby Brissett here because
Jacoby balling.
Jacoby Brissett has basically gotten playing time at every single destination he's been at. And he's been at some rough ones. He's been in Cleveland. He's been in New England with Gerard Mayo as the coach. And despite all that, Jacoby Brissett still continues to be a serviceable quarterback. And on Sunday, he was more than serviceable, over 300 passing yards. I think this Cardinals offense is better than we may think it is. Now, also the Colts defense did not play very well. But, I mean, you look at the way Trey McBride played on Sunday and the way that Marvin Harrison was playing before he suffered a concussion. Yesterday was such a weird game in terms of injuries. There were so many weird ones. We had that Cardinals special teamer on that first kickoff gets carted off on a stretcher. I mean, Charvarius Ward suffers a concussion before the game starts because he bumps into Drew Ogletree during a pregame warm-up, and I'm sorry, that just cannot happen. Like that, like how does that even happen during a warm-up? And
no warm-up should involve any
contact.
players coming near each other at all, ever.
And also to the only, let me mention this real quick. The top 6 corners that the Colts came in with to start training camp are either currently injured or they're not on the roster, right? You've got Jalen Jones and Justin Wally on IR. Charvarius Ward missed last game with a concussion. He's already suffered 2 concussions as a Colt, and that's honestly pretty scary to think about, considering, concussions and what they can do to players. Jalen Jones, who knows when he'll be back? I mean, the Colts need these corners to come back though soon. But despite the secondary injuries, that wasn't even the most disappointing part of the game for me yesterday. It was the lack of a pass rush. Where was the pass rush on Sunday? This is one of the more poor offensive lines in the league. Kyler Murray really got beat up back there through those first 5 weeks. And this defensive line let Jacoby Brissett just sit back and pick apart this Indianapolis Colts secondary. I don't even really know how you can blame the secondary when literally Jacoby Brissett had 20 seconds to sit back there and just pick apart this secondary. And another thing that was really frustrating about this is the Cardinals' offense really ran the same plays most of the game. They killed the Colts with these bootlegs, with these play actions. It would often be dump-offs to guys like Trey McBride and Michael Wilson, 5-yard dump-offs that would turn into 25-yard gains because no defenders would be near them. Another thing, too, is that the Colts might be the worst team in the NFL at giving up third down and 15 or longer. It seems like every time we have third and 15 or every time the Colts have third and 15 or longer, they give it up. I don't know how. That's been a problem with Gus Bradley, with Lou Anarumo, all that stuff. But this pass rush needs to get figured out. Laiatu Latu, nowhere to be seen yesterday. Nobody else really delivered. I mean, we had Ashton Doolin out there rushing Jacoby Brissett on a 3rd down. Now, granted, I don't think that was because of the poor performance of the pass rush. I think that's just Lou Anarumo being, a wizard of a defensive mind. But I was disappointed with the lack of aggression from Lou Anarumo yesterday. Like, you know that your secondary is awful. Why not send 7 guys, 8 guys after Jacoby Brissett? I didn't really understand the strategy yesterday from Lou, and it nearly cost the Colts the game. And as I said, I think the secondary will be totally fine when everybody comes back. I mean, we'll see how much time Mooney misses, and we'll see if Jalen Jones and Kenny Moore are able to come back soon. But this pass rush needs to get figured out. And something we haven't talked about yet is that the Colts freed up $4 million in cap space last week with the restructuring of Kenny Moore's contract. Now, is that going to mean something? We don't know yet, but it could be a sign of something. And we talked about this after the Titans game. I really think that if the Colts are serious about competing this year, you have to go out and fix that pass rush. No team that's won a Super Bowl in like the last 30 years has won with a bad pass rush. Every Super Bowl champion has had a good pass rush. I'm looking what the Eagles did to Patrick Mahomes last year in Super Bowl 59. Got after him all game long. So this is a huge point of concern for the Colts. As I said, when the secondary comes back, if they come back healthy, I think they'll be fine. This pass rush, though, major question marks that need to be answered.
Yeah, this defensive line, I mean, Kwity Paye had 2 sacks, but neither of those sacks were really game-changing or super impactful. I think he even got credit for a sack on a no-gain scramble by Jacoby Brissett towards the end of the game. So, yeah, the concerns have been there with the pass rush. My thing is, like, I think you do have to go out and at least try to find someone at the trade deadline. But I look around the league, and I mean, Max Crosby could be available, but that's going to be a high asking price from the Raiders. You're probably going to have to give up a hefty amount for someone like Trey Hendrickson. I think an economical option would be Jalen Phillips, but he's had a lot of injury issues. So looking around the league, it's like who can you really add that's going to make a difference? Because I think for now, at least, it seems like you might have solved your second linebacker issue. Jermaine Pratt wasn't fantastic in his first game with the Colts, but I think he did enough. With time, he should, acclimate and, be all right. I mean, led the team in tackles. Tackles are an overrated stat, but that's a conversation for another time. And then it's really that pass rusher spot. And I think what yesterday showed in the passing game especially is that this depth is just not good enough in this, especially corner.
Yeah.
So you got to go out and add a corner too. And we'll talk all about this more as the trade deadline gets closer, but Jonathan Edwards and Mekhi Blackman, for every flash that they provide, not going to win you a playoff game if it comes down to it. They're not going to come up with that big end of game pass breakup to secure a game and move you on to the AFC Championship game or whatever. I think that obviously the strength of the secondary is health. When you're healthy, everything looks great. But even then, especially with Jalen Jones not having played much this season, like going out and adding someone more with a little more experience and I guess tread on their tires in the 2025 season can be helpful. And, you can you have those 4 guys you can really rely on: him, Kenny Moore, Travarius Ward, and whoever it is you add, plus Jalen Jones. But yeah, I mean, this defense can't keep playing like this. If the defense keeps allowing, I think they gave up 400 yards total, 400 yards exactly. This is to a team that has 2 wins and has struggled on offense most of the time this year, and for the majority of the game was without their top receiver, was without their top 2 running backs for the entire game. Trey McBride was a constant problem for the Colts. Defending the tight end seems like it's been an issue for a while now. But yeah, I mean, the Colts got to get these defensive issues shorted. Excuse me, words are hard. And it starts up front. It does. You got to get more out of the guys you have, and if you're not going to get that, you got to find a solution on the outside.
Yep. I mean, to a T, that's probably what I would have said. I can't really add too much that's just going to, be a different idea. I am a little skeptical on that front as well, just because I think the wins and the record are kind of echoing or hiding the fact that Lou Anarumo has had some very, 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 very questionable scheme stuff in a few of his games. A lot of what I saw against Arizona looked a lot like Gus Bradley, and that wasn't good. A lot of drop into coverage, a lot of zone that just allowed tight ends to go right across the middle of the field and no one was there. A lot of corners playing way too deep on zone coverage and just any kind of 8-yard, 10-yard hook being open every time. And yeah, not a lot of greatness on the outside. So something to keep in mind. It's just something to think about. I don't know. I'll just say it. I'm still not particularly sold on Lou Anarumo at this point. If you would have asked me after the first game, I've been like, heck yeah, let's do it. But I feel like I said, I think I said this a few episodes ago, it's kind of going the opposite direction for the defense. And it's not going to win you games, especially when it matters.
Yeah, so going to the Lou Anarumo front, I still think I think he's better than Gus Bradley for sure. And I think sometimes what you have to keep in mind is sometimes there's not much what defensive coordinators can do when you're provided with a lack of talent on the field. I mean, let's look at the former Colts defensive coordinator, Matt Eberflus, what he's working with in Dallas. He has nobody on that defense. Micah Parsons is gone. There are no Pro Bowl caliber players on the entire defense. And I really don't want to hear Trayvon Diggs. He gives up 1,000 yards in coverage every single year. The only reason he has these many interceptions is because he's targeted on every single play. So naturally, he's going to get high number of interceptions. I think that when these corners come back, I mean, you look at the games that Lou Anarumo didn't really coach well in. I mean, you look at the Denver game, you look at this game, I don't even think he was that bad in the Rams game. I really don't. You could say he was. The defense did enough to win that game, my opinion. Both of those games, both the 2 games I think he did bad in, Travarius Ward was out. So I think, now it's not great to rely on your success counting on one player.
And your pass rush is fully healthy.
Yeah. Your pass rush that's what I'm saying. So, Peter, you obviously mentioned all those guys. One guy you didn't mention, though, I want to keep an eye on. Let's go to the only team in the NFL without a win, the New York Jets, who I think could be could fire sale at the trade deadline? Will McDonald, young pass rusher. The Jets have so much money tied up to that defensive line right now. I don't know if they're going to be able to pay Will McDonald. And I really would honestly throw out a couple of mid-rounders to get a guy with so much potential to be a game changer in that pass rush. I mean, to be fair, though, I wouldn't mind giving up a lot for Max Crosby, and here's why. Outside of Tyler Warren, who the Colts were just lucky to have fallen in their laps, what has Chris Ballard done with his first-round picks? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Other than Tyler Warren, all of his other first-round picks have been complete disasters. So I'm okay giving up one, maybe two first-rounders for Max Crosby, because you just have to mention, number one, Max Crosby plays the most snaps per game out of any defensive lineman in the league. He plays 98% of defensive snaps for the Las Vegas Raiders, 98% for number 98. And I think he would just be such a culture changer on that defense, a guy who is not afraid to show his passion, a guy who has a tremendous penetration, and the other thing with Max Crosby, he would make that whole defensive line better. Laiatu Latu gets more favorable matchups. Kwity Paye could be more of a situational type pass rusher. So, as I said, I'm not saying the Colts are going to trade for Max Crosby. I'm not even saying the Raiders are going to entertain trading Max Crosby. But I will disagree with what some people will say about giving up too much for a pass rusher, because I really don't think. I think quarterback and pass rusher are the only two positions you give up multiple first-round picks for. And I would not be opposed to them doing that. But as I said, I think it's more likely that either they just ride with it, because obviously Chris Ballard's going to look at this team and say, we're 5-1, we're just going to ride with it the rest of the season. Or you're just going to go out and get a low-risk type of pass rusher like a Will McDonald or, maybe somebody else out there. I mean, obviously, Peter, you're gonna have to correct me on the pronunciation. The seventh rounder who's on the Rams now, Jonah Lual, or on the Raiders.
Laulu.
Yes,
Laulu.
him. He has been outstanding. He left the Colts. He's been outstanding, and Chris Ballard's not going to be happy about that. Imagine if he was on this pass rush. So, again, not saying they're going to trade for anybody. Not saying the Raiders are going to entertain trading Max Crosby. Not going to say the Bengals are entertaining trading Trey Hendrickson. But if the opportunity's there for the Colts, pounce on it. Pounce on it. You're 5-1. Why not go for it this year? The AFC is weak this year. I mean, who thought we'd be sitting here on October 13th saying the Colts are atop the AFC standings and tied for the best record in the entire league? It's just them and Tampa Bay at 5-1. We'll see what Buffalo does tonight. But if the opportunity presents itself, I think Chris Ballard needs to go out and make a splash. He's trying to prove himself this year. I think you got to do it. But you guys can disagree with me.
One last thing, and then I think we could probably get on to talking about the Chargers. You need more from DeForest Buckner.
I agree.
One
Totally
sack.
agree.
One sack on the year. That's just not good enough. It's not the DeForest Buckner that we've come to understand and know in Indianapolis. It's just completely out of character, and I think he's done well to get pressure and maybe create some sacks for teammates. Something Laiatu Latu has done a decent job of this year or this season as well. But DeForest Buckner, I know he's 31 years old, not getting any younger, but he's too important to this team to be having one sack from the first 6 games. It's just not good enough.
I'm curious. I'm trying to find his double team rate as well.
I was just going to ask about that.
The double teams has been issues with DeForest Buckner in the past, but I'm not looking at a stat. I think that is maybe pointing to that a little bit. But yeah, I think it's not going to be like some godforsaken rate that he hasn't dealt with in the past, and that he's still kind of found a way to produce on. Right. So, yeah, I agree with you there, Peter. I think there's opportunities for him to produce a little more for that defensive front.
All right, well, we are going. One more thing to mention: Michael Badgley, perfect in his Colts debut as the new kicker. Not saying he's going to be as good as Spencer Schrader, but just throwing that out there. Let's move on to Week 7. Can't believe we're already in Week 7. It feels crazy, but the Colts are heading back to SoFi Stadium for the second time this year, and they are going to face Jim Harbaugh and the Los Angeles Chargers at 4-2. This game is a 4:05 kickoff on CBS, and the Colts are starting to get some more national attention. This is the number 2 game on CBS this week. They're sending their number 2 crew out there, Ian Eagle, J.J. Watt, Evan Washburn, heading out there to call that game. This game is going to present many challenges for the Colts and the Chargers as well. One thing we have to note, it is going to be very hard to figure out what we're going to see in this game because both teams have significant injuries, right? And we don't know for either team who's going to play and who's not going to play this week. It's Monday. a lot of things can change before the game on Sunday, but there are some challenges that we know the Colts will face regardless of the injury report. And I think the first thing to mention is the quarterback they're going up against, right? Justin Herbert, also one of the front runners for league MVP this year. This is probably the best quarterback the Colts have faced up to this point, other than maybe Matthew Stafford, who at 37 is still doing his thing. Justin Herbert I'm not afraid to say that he's on pace to have his best season in the NFL, because the Chargers, obviously, they haven't really been able to rely on their run game. Their top two running backs are both on IR, which is obviously an advantage for the Colts, and it also sucks for the Chargers because Amari Hampton was having such a good rookie season before he went down with that ankle injury. But facing Justin Herbert's going to be a massive problem for the Colts. And if Jacoby Brissett was able to sit back there and pick apart a Colts secondary, think about what a quarterback as talented as Justin Herbert could do to this Colts secondary. So this is going to be a massive, massive test for the Colts pass rush. Now, granted, the Chargers are missing their two offensive tackles. They are also both on IR. Joe Alt on IR with an ankle. Rashawn Slater's out for the season with a torn patellar tendon. The Colts pass rush, they're counting, the Lou Anarumo and this Shane Steichen are counting on this pass rush to get after Justin Herbert, because I don't really know how many of the corners are going to come back this week, if any of them. And if there is no pass rush this week, Justin Herbert could have maybe the game of his life going up against this completely banged up Colts secondary. Guys, thoughts?
I think there's a clear game plan here for the Chargers, and that is to throw the ball and throw the ball and throw the ball some more. No Najee Harris, no Amari Hampton. I believe starting running back is Kamani Vidal, maybe, if I had to guess. Not completely sure there. And, both tackles being out is tough, but I think if you're Jim Harbaugh, you can take your chances that against a Colts edge group that has, struggled this year. You can buy Justin Herbert enough time to get the ball out. And, he's got a talented group of receivers. Quentin Johnston is finally putting it together this year. Keenan Allen is back in L.A. and doing Keenan Allen-type things. And,
Lad McConkey as well.
Lad McConkey, yes, of course. How could I forget Lad McConkey's dynasty piece for me? Maybe not the guy I want to go too crazy next week. But, yeah, and you look at the Colts defense and the injuries in the secondary and how strong they've been against the run this year, held Arizona to under 90 rushing yards this past week. You're not going to win the game by running the ball. Sure, you're not going to be able to throw the ball every play either, but it's not going to surprise me if Justin Herbert has, over 35 pass attempts in this game, maybe even 40.
Maybe a bit more, honestly.
And it could be more. I mean, he's got the arm to manage a heavy workload like that. And if you're the Colts, I think you probably know what's coming. They're going to attack your secondary and try and pick on some of your unproven corners. So defensively, you just got to create a way to fluster Justin Herbert and maybe rush some decisions, rush some bad throws, try and force some turnovers. And because if you execute in the run game, if you execute on run defense, then you're definitely going to know what you're getting, and you're going to get a lot more passing downs. And I think got to create a couple turnovers too. That's going to be the key. Jack, you say it every week. Whoever wins the turnover battle is going to win the game. I think that's definitely the case here for the Colts. Not necessarily if they lose it, but I think to give themselves a good chance of winning this game, they have to win the turnover battle. And look, I think we talked about it with their first trip to LA against the Rams being a solid test. This is their biggest test so far, because the Chargers are in the AFC, and the Chargers are playing very well right now. They're the first team other than the Rams the Colts have seen this year with a winning record. And they're a team that's tied for first in their division, I believe, and is probably going to be a team you're going to have to face playoff time. So this is a kind of game that, for the Colts, you got to win if you want to stop any sort of potential noise that, this team's number one in the AFC, but they can't beat other playoff teams. They're frauds and they can't do anything. I think there's going to be some noise about that regardless, but if you're the Colts, this is, I mean, every game is a must win, but this is a game that you absolutely have to win if you want to keep, I guess, the positive aura around your team going.
Not to mention the Jaguars are still only a game behind in the AFC South. So, something to keep in mind. Jaguars have maybe escaped some of those wins by the skin of their teeth, but are still, making plays and winning games like they need to. And when those matchups come, divisional matchups, that's going to be something to look out for. But yeah, just to echo what you guys have said, the main attention has to be on Justin Herbert because with how beat up the running back room is, kind of similar to Arizona, they're still going to utilize some guys back there. Hassan Haskins played a good amount and actually had some pretty good plays for them. But yes, Kamani Vidal. Nyheim Hines also on the Chargers depth chart. Nice little reunion for the Colts there. What a story that was, by the way, just coming back from that injury. But
love it for him.
You can't hate the guy, especially if you're a Colts fan. But yeah, a lot of focus on Justin Herbert this week, and with Quentin Johnston out potentially, you're going to look at Vlad McConkey and Keenan Allen. McConkey especially plays in that little slot position where, Colts on the opposite side of things at that nickel corner have health issues already. Keenan Allen is a seasoned veteran is more than likely going to be going up against, some inexperienced guys. So he could feast easily. So you really have to lock in the defensive game plan in this game. And to back that up, plenty of defensive playmakers for the Chargers on the other side of things. So you can't take anything for granted on offense. I think you'll say it every week. Give the ball to Jonathan Taylor. Just let him do his thing. But have to protect Daniel Jones in this game. Now, I did see a stat that Daniel Jones was actually 9 of 9 when he was pressured last week in Week 6. 146.8 quarterback rating. Only took 1 sack. So, maybe not the craziest thing for Daniel Jones to deal with, but he's probably used to it, being a former Giant. But, yeah, I think the Colts really have to own in on their offensive game plan as well and not take anything for granted on the offensive side. I think you have to make some explosive plays, though, in this game as well. We kind of saw a lack of that last week. A few plays here and there that was great. Getting that interception right after giving one up is plays like that will win you games. But I just can't really expect the Colts defense to do that at this point of the game every game. So really, really have to kind of unload the offense a little bit and show the Chargers what you're made of.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad you brought up the Chargers defense, Owen, because this is a really, really good unit. I mean, they were the best scoring defense in the league last year, and they're just about as good this year. Something we have to mention, the Colts offense went 4 for 4 in the red zone last week against the league's third best red zone defense. This week, they're going up against the league's second best red zone defense. So it's going to create even more challenges for Daniel Jones in this offense. I think this game was all about the trenches. If you know anything about Jim Harbaugh and his time in Michigan, you have to beat Jim Harbaugh's teams in the trenches. And obviously the Colts got killed in the trenches last week defensively by the Cardinals offense. Now, offensively for the Colts, they dominated the trenches because their offensive line is one of the best in the league. But if the Colts want to beat the Chargers, they need to have more of a well-rounded game from both sides of the ball, and they have to win the trenches on both sides in this game. And if they don't, I think it could be a really bad day at the office for Indianapolis. Now, I certainly think going to SoFi for the second time might help the Colts because you have some experience in that stadium. Going to the West Coast for the second time is easier than the first time. Obviously, I think another key is to avoid the penalties, right? The game the Colts lost to the Rams, they had over double-digit penalties Last week only 5 penalties for 40 yards, so they got to keep that going. But as I said, I think this game is really all about the trenches. And I think with that, we can just head right into predictions for this game. Again, Week 7. This game's 4:05 p.m. on CBS. I think it's gonna be a really good game. These are two of the top teams in the AFC. Peter, how about you start us off with the picks for this week?
I'm just gonna say it flat out. The Colts are gonna get beat. It's not like they're gonna hand this game away or it's gonna be close and come down to the dying seconds. They're gonna get beat. I love that the offense is scoring at such a high rate, but I worry about this defense, especially with the injuries in the secondary. Health is going to play a factor. I think you can feel better if you can get someone back like Charvarius Ward, obviously, but clearing the concussion protocol in a week is going to be difficult. I don't think Kenny Moore is going to make it back in time. Jalen Jones still on IR, so he's probably not going to be back. I just really don't trust Jonathan Edwards and Mekhi Blackman as the starters, to be completely honest and blunt. I think the pass rush can have a better game and probably create a turnover or two. There's always that kind of thing that, the Chargers are going to charger and they're going to find a way to maybe let the Colts back in the game if they can jump out to a lead or something like that. I think this has the makings of a shootout. I think Daniel Jones and the offense can probably put up a good number of points, maybe 30 plus. I just don't see the defense being as dominant as they need to be in order to beat a good team like the Chargers. I'm going to go 35-27 Chargers with, I'll say, Jonathan Taylor gets in the end zone for the Colts. And in terms of turnovers, I'm going to give Nick Cross an interception because I think we haven't talked about him much, but he has been balling this year and he's due for a big play.
OG?
Colts safeties have played pretty decently for the most part, I would say. Rest of the defense, not much. Peter, I'm with you. I think the Chargers take this game. I don't think it's going to be a shootout. I think Chargers kind of break. The Colts will at one point, and there's not much that the Colts can do about it. Listen, I just think there's just way too many questions on this team continuously, even with these opponents that they're supposed to beat and with the results that they've had. They have beat opponents, and they've beaten them by a lot of points, but I can't really sit here and tell you that I think the Colts are just a completely different and new team than some of the years past. Offense, 100% looks so much better. But that defense, man, I just don't know if much has changed at this point. With giving up that many yards to the Cardinals and a backup quarterback and a lot of weapons out for them, there's a lot of questions there. And I think that gets exposed pretty heavily against Los Angeles. Give me the Chargers 35-10.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Yeah, I just don't see. I think at one point the Colts just can't get anything going. And, a lot of people probably hope that I'm wrong. Heck, I hope I'm wrong because that would be a much more interesting game to watch. I don't know. I think the Chargers are a really good team. And Justin Herbert's playing really good football right now. And it's a very tall task for those for the defensive side, especially those corners, to have to defend that. And I just don't think they get it done.
I disagree. This might be based off vibes, but I really believe that this is going to just be one of those games where, the Colts are not supposed to win, but I think with the resilience of this team, they're going to find a way. 27-24. Give me the Indianapolis Colts in this one. So what I'm going to say about this game is, listen, we could criticize Lou Anarumo all we want last week, and it's deserved criticism, but at the same time, Charvarius Ward getting hurt right before the game starts. Lou Anarumo's defensive game plan was clearly messed up. Clearly. His game plan was clearly for Charvarius Ward to play every snap in this game, And I think the injury happened right before kickoff, and Lou just could not change his defensive game plan for this Arizona Cardinals team. So I think unless I'm not banking on another freak injury to happen right before the game starts that affects Lou Anarumo's game plan. And with how banged up, it's not just the tackles. This whole offensive line for the Chargers is banged up, right? I think Lou is going to be way more aggressive this week. I think he is a much better adapter than Gus Bradley was. And I think we're going to see constant 5-6-man pressures from this Colts team. I think we're going to start to see Zaire Franklin in the backfield more. And I think they're going to pressure Justin Herbert just enough that he's going to be rattled a bit. And again, Quentin Johnston missing last week. That's the receiver on this Chargers team that I'd be most concerned about if he was healthy in this game. But hamstring injuries usually take several weeks to heal. So I'm not sure if he'll be back this week. And I just think this offense is just completely dominated so far this season. They put up almost 30 against the Broncos defense. They put up 31 against the highest scoring defense in the NFC. I think this game is all about quick passes because the Chargers are tied with the Colts for 6th in the league in sacks. So Josh Downs, start him in fantasy this week. I think he's going to have a huge game. All these quick passes, I think he's going to find the end zone again this week. I think Jonathan Taylor, multiple touchdowns probably again. I wouldn't be shocked. But I just think that the Colts, they're grit, and I think they're going to be motivated to win this game and prove that they are for real. So yeah, this might be crazy, but I'm taking the Colts over the Chargers. We have to keep in mind, the Chargers are only 1.5 point favorites in this game. So clearly Vegas is starting to buy into the hype of this Indianapolis Colts team, and I am buying into it as well. Good teams win games they're not supposed to. I know it's on the road, but is it really on the road? The Chargers don't really have many fans. It's not really going to be that crazy of an atmosphere. I really think that the Colts are going to find a way to win this game. But with that being said, that is going to conclude this week's edition of the Colts on Kirkwood podcast. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in. We'll be right back here in Bloomington next week to recap this upcoming game against the Chargers and preview the Week 8 game against the Tennessee Titans. For my co-hosts, Peter Miller and Owen Graham, I'm Jack Rizzo. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Have a great week, and we will see you next week. So long, friends.